Something I've been thinking about recently is how fame really affects people. Some say it has the tendency to make people jerks or become consumed by greed, and others say wealth just allows people to show who they truly are. Fame is a power that not a lot of people get to experience in their lifetimes, but those who do are under extreme pressure by the world and something that us normal people may never understand. It can lead to mental health issues, including depression and anxiety, substance abuse issues, distrust, and isolation. Having your life under a microscope definitely doesn't sound too fun. But one of the biggest aspects I personally think about with fame is how a person uses it to make an impact on the world. And with today's video, I'd like to discuss Radiohead, their effects on the world, and the effects of fame on them. And before I continue, over 70% of the people who watch my videos are not subscribed, so if you could hit that red button and help me grow, I would really appreciate that. Radiohead started as a group of friends out of Abingdon, Oxfordshire in 1985. At the time, they were still called On a Friday and attending school. They played gigs every now and then and were even offered a record deal by Island Records because of an early demo they had floating around. But they decided to decline this at the time as they wanted to attend university first. The band continued to practice and play together for the next couple of years before the band made a demo tape that would give the band an opportunity to sign a 6-album recording deal with EMI. And because the label requested a name change, the band became Radiohead, really starting their journey. In May of 1992, Radiohead's debut, the Drill EP, was released. It didn't perform too well, but was a decent start for the band. And over the next year, the band would work towards their debut album, Pablo Honey, releasing Creep as a single in late 1992. This started to generate buzz for the band in Britain, but not all of it was in their favor. In fact, the track was blacklisted by BBC Radio as it was deemed too depressing. Creep. Too depressing. I'm sure they'll love the rest of Radiohead's discography. Pablo Honey finally released in February of 1993 and reached number 22 in the UK charts. The band failed to make too much of an impression in the UK, but it did gain traction elsewhere. In Israel, Creep became quite the hit, and during that time it began to see play in the US, rising to number 2 on the rock charts. This led the music video to be in heavy rotation on MTV, and the band began to see growth. The band began working on their sophomore effort, The Bends, in 1994, but the pressure was on. They were expected to match the success of Creep, which was no easy feat. Tom York at this time became disillusioned with being this representation of the rock star lifestyle. But despite this, the band released the album. This album was the first time the band would work with their now longtime collaborators Nigel Godrich and Stanley Donwood. The album did quite well and allowed the band to not be known as just one-hit wonders. The band spent a ton of time touring, and during this time, multiple singles from the album would rise in the charts, especially in the US, with their music videos seeing tons of play. In late 1995, Radiohead released Lucky as a single on the Help album, a charity album for the War Child, which is a charity to help children affected by war. The band would also begin working on OK Computer during this time. It was by far their furthest sounding album from their debut and was an attempt to try something different. The band didn't have any intention of matching the band's success, and in fact, they tried to avoid it. But in this attempt, they utterly failed. The album was a critically acclaimed success that far surpassed any of their expectations. It had huge singles all over the world and found itself on tons of top albums of all time lists. Even to this day, the album is considered to be one of the best. But it was the start of a dark time for the band. As I covered in my A Tribute to Kid A series, touring during OK Computer completely exhausted the band. Tom York faced years of being a shell of a person, and the rest of the band felt similar. In fact, when setting out to create their next album, they said they most likely would have broken up if they made another album like OK Computer. The band was Burnout, and this burnout led to the next album, Kid A. Kid A was a huge departure from the sounds of OK Computer, but in hindsight, I really see this album as a natural progression for the band. A lot of the tracks are atmospheric and downright depressing, some even speaking about their time touring for OK Computer, like How to Disappear Completely, which is about the time the band faced. The band avoided all of the normal things a band does for this album's release. It was barely promoted, didn't have any music videos or singles released before the album, and once again, to the band's surprise, it was acclaimed. But I think this time around the band really started to come around with their own fame. As for the next release, Amnesiac, they once again did all the normal promotional things. They made music videos, did interviews, released singles, and weren't really afraid of the fame anymore. In 2004, when the band released Hail to the Thief, I think the band found something they wanted to do: use their fame to send a message. While the previous albums have political messages scattered throughout, Hail to the Thief is one big collection of politically charged tracks. And the tracks all have this way of talking about the way the world was and the problems within it. Going forward, the band continued to use their status as a power for good and trying to move the industry forward, like the pay what you want model for In Rainbows, rejecting their music from being on Spotify until like 2016 because of the way the company treated and paid smaller artists. The band, especially Tom York, are extremely vocal on social media about issues in the world, criticizing the government's flaws and being activists against climate change. The band has made a huge impact, and I don't think anyone can deny that. They continue to push the envelope on how you can use fame for good. This video is kind of an experiment. I may try to do more videos about the effects of fame on other bands in the future, so let me know what you think below, and other bands you might want me to cover. This has been Stemp. Thank you for watching.